There's, and there may have been mention of this already, and the author, whom I regard very highly, who is someone who I have supported in all kind of ways because I think he's sharp on many issues. But the issue with community facilities and safety is not, in my opinion, a one that has received as much attention as I'd like in this bill. I read the fire piece a couple times, and it said in a fire building or on a fire building.
Yes.
A fire department building. Does that at all extend to schools in any sense?
Again, schools are not owned by cities normally. They're part of school districts.
Right.
This bill doesn't govern school districts.
But land use goes to the local jurisdiction, even at schools. Land use doesn't reside with the local education.
The cities don't own the land. They don't own vertical structures on school property.
But in the right-of-way, for example, even with this small cell, is this 300 feet or 200 feet capacity? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, 200 feet, but in the public right-of-way.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping this. If there is a vertical pole within the public right-of-way of a fire station, there's nothing.
Oh, there's nothing that
preempts that from being sited there.
For me, that would be an ongoing concern that this bill moves forward.
Mm-hmm.
It would be schools and fire facilities. Just for the record, Chair, and
maybe I can direct the industry to ask is there a chance that under the provisions of the bill, that under what's allowed under the bill, that an antenna would ever be put on school property?
It would have to be negotiated with the school district.
It'd have to be negotiated with school district.
Correct. And of course, the bill primarily is about accessing public right-of-way, and of course, schools are not considered public right-of-way.
Okay. I would add that charter schools are a little different.
Again, not public right-of-way.
Okay. But it's something to think about. I mean, I've been looking at this for a few days, so I don't know that it's. I'm not settled on that yet. This is kind of thinking out loud. But thank you. The local control argument is somewhat persuasive in my mind because the jurisdictions that I represent, the county and city of Los Angeles, the cities of Culver City and Inglewood, uniformly oppose this measure. I suspect there are different reasons why, and I think they have varying levels of positive and maybe not so positive relationships with telecom providers. But I find it curious that there's uniform opposition.
Assembly member, if
Yes,
I could
sir.
just correct, not the majority of cities in the state don't oppose this bill.
Okay.
There isn't a majority of the cities. Not all cities oppose this bill. Not even a majority of the cities.
Just some.
It's a very high number.
Okay.
It's like 197, but it's not. I think there are over 400
cities, yeah,
over 400
get
cities.
counted.
So it's not a majority of the cities.
Understood. All of the cities in the jurisdiction that I represent
Okay.
do not support this proposal.
100%.
And the county, which is the largest in the state, does
Yeah.
not support this measure. And it really gives me pause. I am not as convinced on the immediate economic benefit and how Sacramento is better placed to make decisions for local government. In my mind, the local officials and jurisdictions do a decent job. City of Culver City, for example, has made a very substantial investment in broadband. Some of you may be aware of that, in order to attract Silicon Beach business to the city of Culver City, and it's been a great public-private partnership, and they've made a substantial plan to get the entire city and broadband. I guess the term would be wired. And and they started on one major corridor in the eastern portion of the city of Culver City. The county and city of Los Angeles have each made closing the digital divide high priorities and getting access to wireless across those cities by virtue of senior centers and public libraries. The land use process is a part of, in the siting of these small cells and regular towers, is a part of how they look, in my mind, at access to technology and smartphones and smart devices. And I am not yet convinced that this measure is an appropriate step to remove that local control. Now, I have a different experience because I represent a couple of small cities and then a couple of very big jurisdictions. And I think they're sophisticated, they know how to negotiate, and they are more able to appreciate the local concerns of their residents as well. Because as I recall, now maybe I could be a bit confused, but as I recall, in some instances there is substantial residential opposition to these devices, and the local institutions and elected officials are very sensitive to the hyper-local issues. And it may not mean much to from a Sacramento perspective of whether or not it's in a particular public medium, but it may be quite substantial for someone who has great pause about a small cell tower. That's why, though I know you've done a lot of work, you told me about the amendments that you took. Individuals were kind enough to show me all of the amendments, and it sounds like you're even comfortable with making sure language is tight should this move forward. I am yet convinced about the efficacy and economy and wisdom in supporting this measure. So I won't be supporting it today. You may have other insights about local control that because you were a city councilman, but when I talk to the local elected officials and I go to the community groups and my staff do tonight and throughout the week, we have these things called neighborhood councils in LA or community groups or neighborhood associations. It'll be very difficult to defend voting for such a proposal as I believe it is currently constructed and what its impact might be.
Can I reply?
I would welcome it.
Yeah, because I want to make it very clear that when it comes to Californians and how they feel about this, 75% of Californians say it's very important for wireless companies to upgrade networks.
Okay. That's
something they want. To play small cell, and 75% want to place small cell devices in publicly owned property. 69% support laws that expedite local approval of small cell. 66% believe that small cell devices should be subject to the same, should not be subject to the same approval process as traditional large-scale cell towers. Why? Again, this bill does not take away local control. That is an enormous myth of the opposition of this bill. We have ensured that the locals still retain the authority to create design guidelines. They run the permit process. They can not approve a permit if it does not conform to their design guidelines. There is still a very robust. I mean, we went line by line in this bill that showed that the states retain the right to negotiate with these. I mean, the cities can opt to negotiate. There's ample language in the bill that gives the local municipalities if they want something to cater to the community, I'm sure the companies will come in and provide, and that's allowed for in the bill. What is very important in this bill, and this is why we need this bill statewide, is we've gotten to the costs. Unrolling out this program is going to be very expensive, and the truth is these companies are going to recover their costs where they can. That may be certain exclusive areas. If you're going to be paying $2,000 per antenna And they're going to be, you ask the right questions in terms of how many antennas, but do the math in terms of thousands of antennas.
Right.
And there are only a certain amount of customers in a certain area. The companies are not going to go there to charge what could be an additional $1,000 a year to your cell phone bill. Some people may be able to pay that to benefit this program, but there will be a lot that won't. So by us, the legislature, not coming in and establishing reasonable rates, the cities are going to work all over the place and come up with different rates, and it's going to cause this program to be unmanageable at a state level. But it's also going to restrict who can access this service, and it'll be the underserved communities that'll be the first that'll be excluded, because they won't be able to afford to pay for this service, because the cost of placing this on the public right-of-way is going to be prohibitive to those communities.
And that's the impetus for the bill in your mind. It's your primary concern.
I want to keep, it's very important for me to keep the costs low. And cities argue, well, that's our money. Well, yeah, but what they're doing is they're kind of inserting a little hidden tax in there and saying this is going to go into our general fund. And we don't want to have to vote on that or go through a process, and we'd rather very quietly negotiate something that's owned by the public for the purpose of generating rate. And I know that's going to happen, and that's just what not passing this bill is going to translate into. And I'm very sympathetic to cities. Yes, you know, they have been, I want to just associate my comments with Assemblymember Grayson. His were excellent. He really pointed out a lot of real concerns that are the same ones that I share. But, you know, we passed SB 1 this year, and the cities are going to be benefiting from the action we took. We're working on a park bond. We're doing work here to raise revenue. And we take the hard votes here, and guess who gets to spend the money? The locals. But they also need to do some of that work locally, too. Okay. And I just don't support a hidden process to charge people on their cell phone for municipal services, and especially if you're going to have some cities charge $6,000 a location, or $2,000 or $1,000 or whatever, and some $200. Now the people getting $200 for their city are subsidizing the municipal services for a city that they'll probably never visit across the state. And so, you know, I need your help in moving this bill forward, Assembly Member. It's very important to the future economy of our state. But I think when they come here and say that I haven't met with them and that I make amendments to the bill without their participation, but they have never, ever presented an amendment to me in writing, and they have not ever requested amendment from me in writing, and I have gone to my mayors and I have gone to the representatives of the opposition saying, present me your amendments, and they come here and say we can do it better, there's a better way, this bill's not ready, but they will not present any amendments. You know, you've been here long enough to know that that is a red flag in the business that we're in. If there was a real concern, they would be presenting amendments to me that we could discuss, and I'd be glad to work with cities, as I've been, adding 30 amendments to this bill that since we've started, and even increasing the amount of revenue that they're getting. We've done everything, Assembly Member, and I'm still open to working with the cities to address their concerns. But, you know, I really want to work hard, and I hope you'll back me up in drawing the line on the cost of unrolling this program, because if we make it too expensive, it's just not going to come to underserved areas, and that's a fact.
And Senator, this is why I always support your legislation, because you're passionate and you're engaged and you have sensitivity to the local concern. 649 is not there yet for me, and we'll see what happens in the committee, and continue talking from there. And if it requires a further amendment to move, or if you're interested in talking to me after this, I may have some suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Senator Grayson.
Madam Chair, thank you again for a second opportunity here. Before we were to go to a vote and cast, I just wanted to clarify one more time and make it, because I am incredibly sensitive to local government needs. I come from that perspective from that position. And I come from a place that is very smart. They're very innovative. I met with them 11 days ago, and they expressed their opposition, their concern. My response was, let me have some amendments. Give me some language. I checked as of today, and we still haven't heard back from them. So having said that, I want to state once more, there must be an assurance. If I am to vote and move this forward to the next committee today, then there has to be assurance of equitable access. There has to be some language clarification on feasible design and co-location, and there must be some addressing of language with the League of City opposition, local opposition, and the understanding of what prohibition is, what's not, and finding that sweet spot. Otherwise, I do reserve the right to vote in a different manner on the floor if it reaches me there. And this is the reason why I say this. If we stop your bill today, then there is no more discussion.
Yeah.
We're done. But if we do have another committee, we do have the floor. So we have a little bit more time, and approps. So actually 2 more committees and then the floor. We actually have some time for my city that I went and visited, the largest in my district, to get some language in, for others to get language in, for us to consider and continue to work together. But if I see no evidence of any improvement, I will not be so supportive on the floor.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Sure. Assemblymember Caballero.
I don't have a question, but I just want to be clear in regards to all of the comments that are being made here today is that I do think there's a sweet spot. And I understand what you're saying in regards to your disappointment that the League of Cities and some of the other organizations haven't come to the table and said, this is the language that we want. Like very many of the members here, have heard from my local electeds, and they're unanimously opposed to it. So I need some time to be able to go home and have a conversation and really push some issues. The issues that I raised before are the issues that I'm concerned about: the feasible design, as well as I want to make sure that we have the language in the bill that allows cities to make some decisions and they don't get sued because they decided to do something a little bit differently. So I want to be able to look at that. But I'm going to lay off it. That doesn't mean I don't support it. I think it needs a little bit more work. If it passes out, let's meet, because I will go back to my cities and be real specific about what kinds of things I'm looking at. I want to be able to support it, because I think you're moving in the right direction. I think you've got it right. We've got to streamline this. We just have to. But I just don't feel comfortable with it right now. So,
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to make a few comments, and I have Mr. Carlson, you had a couple of items that you want to talk about on technical, I think, that were related to the amendments that were brought forward, and I want to give you the opportunity to share the thoughts that you had on those so we can make sure it's perfectly clear. That I want to assure all of you that we have worked really hard with the author, with industry. We've asked for the League's input. We haven't, again, received any kind of amendments, even from my locals, I guess, just other than oppose the bill. I'm sure you have suggestions. But I want to remind you something. I fight for rural communities. I will always fight for rural communities. And right now, this could be a bidding war. I do not want a bidding war. So I appreciate what you've brought forward so far. So again, Mr. Carlson, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think what we wanted to make sure is that, again, some of the issues that have been raised about, the cities don't get an opportunity to negotiate. I think one of the amendments that was taken today added a phrase "different than" as opposed to "less than" to the negotiation part of the bill, which was designed to open it up to say you can negotiate for whatever you want. And I think that was we hope that does the trick. Certainly that was the intent. It was never our intent to limit the ability to negotiate. What we wanted to do was to not be mandated to do something as part of the agreement. That was and that was the reason the language in the bill was, so well, you can't require us to do that, but we never intended that to not mean that we couldn't sit there and talk, just like, Sacramento and Verizon did, and they talked about, okay, well, for for the for the lower price for the small cells, we can do other things, and that's really what we want to be able to continue to do. Also, we in the other aspect of the bill, we changed the term from administrative fee to additional charge. There was a concern raised by local governments on our stakeholder meeting last Thursday, which your Chief of Staff and Angela hosted, and that was terrific, to make sure that that didn't get confused with the cost recovery part of the bill. And we understood that. Our intent was never to have that conflated. It's cost recovery plus an additional charge of up to $250, but of course the ability to negotiate in addition to that. We believe that, and we've tried to put, again, the design and co-location conditions into the bill. It's there 3 times. We keep saying it, and maybe there's a better way to say it. But I mean, we really mean that. I mean, and design, we think, is a really broad term. Design is not only what it looks like, it's what it's made out of, how it fits. So we kind of thought that might have been a good way. The word feasible is there because, well, it has to work. We have our stuff has to work, right? So, and again, Assemblywoman Caballero was kind of getting to that, and some of the size issues, I think, work at that. Again, the size stuff is cumulative, not the issue of having a refrigerator on the pole is just not going to happen. All the pictures, I think, that we provided have indicated that. So, as Senator Wesso has indicated very, very clearly, I think we've tried really hard. If there's something we're missing, happy to talk about it. But right now, we think this is a pretty good proposal. Again, we'll be talking about the issues that some of the members raised as we go forward to the next committee, and hopefully, if we can do something with that, we'll try our best to do that.
Probably the number one thing I got from my community was, again, regarding the design review. I think that's where locals have to step up. And for my small community, we have a design review process, and maybe it's time that we're going to need to go back and change some of those rules and regulations on design review. So I think that's something that we as locals do have some control over, is that go back and look at your design review process. I appreciate that all the work you've done, and I want to thank all of you here today for your testimony. You came from a long distances to make sure you were heard. And we appreciate it. I want to appreciate the committee has worked very hard on trying to make sure we make something doable. Many of you know that this is one of my most important things, is to make sure that everybody has access and to close the digital divide. So thank you, Senator Hueso, for bringing this forward and agreeing to the committee amendments listed on page 13 and 14. And I'd like to read those because I think some people are not aware of those changes. So we delete Section 2 of the bill, which would have required automatic renewal of permits for wireless facilities unless the facility does not meet codes and permit conditions that applied when the permit was first approved. Clarified that the $250 per attachment amount is part of the rate cities and counties may charge for their use of their infrastructure, and that permit fees would be separate from the $250 charge. Clarified that agreements between a local agency and a wireless service provider can include an attachment amount that is different from the amount specified in the bill. Restored the bill's language that grandfathers existing contracts as it read, leaving the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, and clarified that this bill does not change the rules and compensation structure for attachments to utility poles that are owned by electrical corporations or telephone corporations. With those amendments, I will be supporting your bill today.
Very well.
Thank you.
Would you like to close?
I think everything has been said. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to present the bill so thoroughly, and thank all of you for your comments and questions in this great process. Thank you.
If this bill gets out, it goes over to communications and conveyance, and additional amendments and changes could be offered there as well. Secretary, call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended, and we refer to the Committee on Communications and Conveyance. Aguiar-Curry.
Aye.
Aguiar-Curry, aye. Waldron. Aye. Waldron, aye. Bloom. Bloom not voting. Caballero. Caballero not voting. Gonzalez-Fletcher. Aye. Gonzalez-Fletcher, aye. Grayson. Aye. Grayson, aye. Lackey. Aye. Lackey, aye. Ridley-Thomas. No. Ridley-Thomas, no. Vopel. Aye. Vopel, aye. Bill's
Bill is out 6-1. Thank you very much, everyone, and please feel free to get in contact with you. Thank you. We're going to take a brief recess to clear those of you that would like to get out and for me to take a break.